So over the last few years, I've interviewed a lot of publishers and supervisors and music library owners for my website and for my podcast. And something I hear really consistently from almost all of the people I've interviewed that are running publishing companies and music libraries is typically if a catalog has X number of songs, let's say it has 10,000, regardless of the size of the catalog, generally what people indicate to me is that usually on average only about 5 to 10% of their catalog actually gets licensed frequently. In other words, 5 to 10% of all the artists with any given company are licensing most of the music. And it's not always 100% clear why certain artists get licensed more than others, but there are definitely some generalizations we can make. And the most sort of glaringly obvious criteria for artists that get licensed all the time is that their music is simply, not in all cases, but in most cases, artists that get licensed more than others are making really good music, really good or great music. And so this is a little bit subjective, and I won't go into the subjective nature of this, but as someone who runs a music marketing company and a music licensing website, I listen to a lot of music, and there are certain artists that I work with and that I get pitched that there's just some quality about their music that I know right away is better than the average submission I get. To me, it is very objective. Things like music production, vocal performance. The songs themselves are probably the most subjective, but there are elements that stand out, whether it's production-wise or performance-wise. Usually it's a combination of both, but I just kind of know when something is really, really good. And almost invariably, these types of artists end up having more success, or they sign record deals, or they get their music licensed frequently. So kind of goes without saying, but strive to be really excellent in everything you do. And I always kind of feel like if there's a question about, if you're sort of wondering whether or not your music is good enough, it probably isn't. And I don't mean that in a negative way or a cynical way, but you want to get to the point where you're making really good songs, you're writing really good songs, you're recording your songs really well. And I think you kind of know when you get to that point, when you get to the point where you can objectively listen to your material and know without a shadow of a doubt that it really stands up to the competition, that's where you want to be. So another element to this is the idea of creating artist music and being an artist versus doing production music. And they're two fairly different paths within the music licensing industry. But I think a lot of times artists that have a sound, that have something very unique about them, again, if it's done very well, I see these types of artists getting licensed more and making more money per sync fee. If you're doing production music and background music, you can certainly license a large volume of music potentially, but you're not going to make as much in sync fees and royalties usually, because this type of music there's more of it. So the demand isn't as great. So I think, kind of to sum up, the idea is you want to be in this 5 to 10% of artists that are doing most of the licensing. And you do this through obviously writing great songs, producing them really well, but also developing a sound, developing sort of your own calling card so that when music supervisors are working on projects, they think of you, they think of your sound. Oftentimes when supervisors like artists and discover music that they like, they'll use those artists again and again. And this kind of goes back to the 5% rule as well, which is at the end of the day, there's only so many music licensing opportunities. And if you are established and you do have a unique sound and you have fans and people that like your music within the industry, they're going to use it again. So strive to be as great as you can be in all aspects, and you're going to go a lot further.